Okay, so picture this. Your whole world has just been turned upside down. Your nation's been conquered, your capital city is surrounded, and you, one of the sharpest young minds of your generation, are now a prisoner of war. Now for Daniel, this isn't the end of his story, it's actually the very beginning. So let's dive in and go through this chapter verse by verse to see how a profound faith gets tested right in the heart of a conquering empire.
The story kicks off in Daniel 1, verses 1 and 2. We're told right away that Nebuchadnezzar came and besieged Jerusalem, but the absolute key detail is right there in verse 2. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. The text immediately frames this whole thing not as just a military failure, but as something that happened under divine sovereignty.
To really get what's going on, you need a little bit of historical context. And this timeline here, it really helps. You can see that Daniel's capture in 606 BC wasn't some random one-off event. No, it was actually part of this long, slow, agonizing collapse that started years earlier when King Josiah was killed. After that, Judah was basically a pawn between huge empires, and once Babylon won the massive Battle of Carchemish, they became the undisputed superpower, and Judah's fate was pretty much sealed.
So, back in verse 2, it mentions that the temple vessels were carried off into the land of Shinar. Now, this isn't just some random place name. Shinar is ancient Babylonia. I mean, we're talking the dead center of global power at this point. This was a huge symbolic move. The treasures of Judah's God were now basically trophies in the treasury of Babylon's God.
So the big question is, how did it come to this? Why did Jerusalem fall? Well, the sources show it was kind of a perfect storm. First up, and this is a big one, was spiritual rebellion. The people had just ignored warning after warning until, as the Bible says, there was no remedy. Second, you have just plain bad political decisions. King Jehoiakim made a terrible bet, rebelling against Babylon to side with Egypt. That did not go well. And third, you can't ignore geography. Judah was stuck right in the middle of these two superpowers, making it crucial territory to control.
And when you look at the two kings at the center of this conflict, I mean, the contrast is just, wow. On one hand, you have Nebuchadnezzar the Great. This guy is a legendary empire builder who ruled for over 40 years. On the other side, Jehoiakim, a puppet king whose entire legacy is summed up as doing that which was evil. Let's be real, this was never going to be a fair fight.
And you know, the prophet Jeremiah did not hold back when it came to Jehoiakim's future. I mean, listen to this prophecy. It's absolutely brutal. It's basically saying he'll get an animal's burial, just unceremoniously dumped outside the city gates. Commentaries tell us that's likely exactly what happened to him on the road to Babylon, a really stark fulfillment of this prophecy.
Okay, so let's move on to verses 3 through 7. The siege is done, but Nebuchadnezzar's strategy is just getting started. Now we see him kick off this super specific recruitment program, targeting the absolute best of the people he just conquered.
Verse 4 gives us the checklist, and it is intense. I mean, look at this. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just grabbing hostages, he was headhunting. He wanted the royal and noble kids, the ones who were physically flawless, good-looking, smart, knowledgeable, basically the whole package. The goal here was to take Judah's future leaders and completely re-educate them to serve the Babylonian Empire. Talk about a strategic brain drain.
And then in verse 7, we get to one of the most powerful moves of all. They change their names. And you got to understand, this is way more than just a new name tag. Take Daniel. His Hebrew name means God is my judge. They change it to Belteshazzar, which means Bel's prince, honoring Babylon's main god. This was a calculated strategy to try and erase their identity, their culture, and their loyalty to their god.
Which brings us right to the heart of this chapter, in verses 8 through 16. After losing their home, their freedom, and even their names, Daniel and his friends now face this deeply personal test of their faith. And making the wrong choice here, it could literally cost them their lives.
So here's the million-dollar question, right? How on earth does a captive say no to a king? Verse 8 says Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's food and wine. Can you just imagine the pressure? You are a prisoner. You are completely at the mercy of the most powerful man on the planet. To refuse a gift from his own table, that is an incredible risk.
So what's his plan? He doesn't stage some big protest or start a rebellion. No, in verse 12, he does something really smart. He respectfully suggests a little experiment, a simple 10-day test.
It's just a brilliant move, so diplomatic, so wise, but he's not backing down 1 inch on his conviction.
And the choice couldn't be clearer. On one side, you have the king's table, with rich meat and wine, food that was almost certainly offered to idols first, which was a huge problem for Jewish law. On the other side, Daniel's request, pulse, which is basically just vegetables and water. It's the ultimate choice between luxurious compromise and simple, faithful commitment.
And the result? Well, verse 15 tells us it was a total vindication of their faith. After those 10 days, they didn't just look okay, they actually looked healthier, fairer, and fatter, as the text says, than all the other guys eating the king's rich food. Their physical appearance became this undeniable, visible sign that God was blessing their obedience. This was never just about food, it was about faithfulness. Okay, so this leads us to the grand finale of their training, in verses 17 to 21. 3 years have passed. It is final exam time. And now we get to see the ultimate payoff for their quiet, unwavering conviction.
So the big day is here. Verse 18 tells us that after finishing their 3-year, basically university-level education in all things Babylonian, they get called in for their final exam. And who's the examiner? None other than King Nebuchadnezzar himself. Talk about a high-stakes interview.
And the result, which we see in verse 20, is just staggering. The king personally quizzes them on all matters of wisdom and understanding. And his final verdict? These 4 young guys from Judah were 10 times better than all of his own expert magicians and astrologers in the entire kingdom. Their God-given wisdom didn't just measure up, it blew the competition completely out of the water.
The chapter then wraps up with this one simple but incredibly powerful line in verse 21. And Daniel continued even unto the 1st year of King Cyrus. He didn't just survive this experience, he thrived. He served at the highest levels of government for something like 70 years, long enough to see the whole Babylonian Empire rise and then fall to the Persians under King Cyrus.
And that, right there, is the incredible message of Daniel chapter 1. It all kicked off with what seems like a small decision, right? What to eat for dinner. But that one single act of faithfulness, that personal conviction, it set the stage for a lifetime of influence that literally outlasted an entire empire. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How can one person's unwavering personal conviction truly shape the course of history?